The shot echoed across the barren Arizona flats, piercing the night like a crack in the darkness itself. Ethan Wolfe stood motionless on his cabin porch, Winchester leveled at the shadowy figure huddled against the feed barrels in his barn. The lantern in his left hand cast just enough light to reveal a woman, thin, dirty, with matted black hair, frozen in the act of stealing grain. "Don't move," Ethan growled, the scar from Gettysburg pulling tight across his weathered face. "Thieves get shot in these parts." The woman didn't run. Instead, her voice came, soft yet steady, carrying across the night air with words he never expected. "Have mercy. I can make you a dad if you forgive me." Ethan's finger tensed on the trigger, then relaxed. 10 years since Sarah died of fever while he was at the front lines. 10 years alone on this God-forsaken patch of Arizona dirt. A lesser man might have laughed or taken advantage. Ethan just lowered his rifle an inch. "You got a name, thief?" he asked, voice like gravel. "Nina," she answered, her Apache accent evident, but her English clear. She rose slowly, revealing a torn dress and arms marked with bruises. "I wasn't stealing much, just enough to survive another day." Ethan studied her in the lantern light. Early 20s, clearly starving, one eye swollen. Someone had beaten her, and recently. The code of the West was clear. You didn't let people starve, not even thieves, not if you wanted to keep your humanity. "Barn's yours for tonight," he said finally. "Come morning, you're gone." He tossed her a horse blanket and left, the barn door creaking shut behind him. As he settled into his bed, rifle propped against the wall, Ethan told himself he was just following the code. Nothing more. Morning came with pale light bleeding across the horizon. Ethan stepped onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, and froze. There was Nina, not fleeing as expected, but repairing the broken fence post near the corral. Her movements were precise, practiced. She'd clearly done this work before. When she saw him watching, she straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. "I fix what I can before I go," she said simply. By noon, she'd mended 2 fence sections, fed the horses, and swept the barn cleaner than it had been in years. Ethan watched from a distance, saying nothing. When she finally approached the porch where he sat cleaning his rifle, her eyes met his directly. "I know horses, I know land. I can work," she said. "Need no payment but food and shelter." "Why would I trust an Apache thief?" he asked, voice neutral. "Same reason I trust white man who didn't shoot me," she replied evenly. A week passed. Nina proved her worth daily, rising before dawn, working until dusk, speaking little. Ethan learned she handled horses better than most men he'd known in the cavalry. She could track game, set snares, predict weather from the sky. Useful skills in the unforgiving Arizona territory. He offered her the lean-to behind the cabin instead of the barn. She accepted with a simple nod. It was on the 8th night when they heard the wolves. A hungry pack, drawn by the scent of Ethan's cattle, circled just beyond the corral fence. Ethan grabbed his rifle and rushed outside. Nina was already there, torch in hand. The wolves charged, gray shadows in the moonlight. Ethan fired, dropping the led animal. A second wolf leapt toward the weakest calf. Nina moved with startling speed, driving a knife into the predator's neck with precision that came only from years of training. Together they fought off the pack. Ethan's marksmanship and Nina's blade work forming an unexpected alliance. When it was over, 3 dead wolves lay in the dirt, and the rest had scattered back into the darkness. "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" Ethan asked, breathing hard. "Same place you did," she answered. "Necessity." Later, as they sat by the fire in his cabin, Nina finally spoke of her past. "My people cast me out, said I'm cursed." Her eyes reflected the flames as she stared into them. "Called me Deathbringer. Said my blood is poison. Ethan didn't press. He knew when wounds were too fresh to probe. You can stay on, he said instead. Work for your keep. Her eyes met his, searching for deceit. Finding none, she nodded once. That night, as Ethan checked his perimeter before sleep, a distant gunshot echoed from the direction of the main trail. Someone was coming. The peaceful isolation of the past week was about to end. Ethan rode into Cedar Creek 2 days later, supply list and rifle both in hand. The dusty outpost barely qualified as a town. A general store, saloon, blacksmith, and sheriff's office lining its single street. As he tied his horse outside Harlan's general store, the conversations around him quieted. Strangers always drew attention in small settlements like this. Inside, as old Harlan filled his order, the storekeeper leaned across the counter. You still keeping to yourself out on that north property? Harlan asked. Eyes narrowed. Always do, Ethan replied, counting out coins. Might want to know there's men looking for an Apache woman, Harlan continued. Offering good money too. Rich fella name of Maxwell Harrington put up the reward. Says she's wanted for theft and worse. Ethan's face remained impassive. Lot of Apache between here and the reservation. This one's special, they say. Young. Marked somehow. Harrington's man Jackson's been asking all over. Mean-looking bastard. Got 5 gunmen with him. As if summoned by the mention, the door swung open. The man who entered made the room go silent. Tall, lean, with a black duster and matching hat. His face bore a patchwork of scars, and 2 pistols hung low on his hips. The badge on his chest wasn't government issue, a bounty hunter's star. You the fellow with the north property? Jackson asked, eyes fixing on Ethan. Might be, Ethan replied, turning slowly. Seen any Apache moving through? Woman, about 20, probably alone. Only Indians I've seen lately are dead ones, Ethan said flatly. Jackson smiled, revealing a gold tooth. That's so, because word is you fought with Geronimo's scouts before enlisting, got friendly with the locals. War changes perspectives, Ethan replied. I keep to myself now. $500 for information leading to her, Jackson said. Double if you bring her in yourself. Mr. Harrington is mighty eager to find her. What did she do? Ethan asked, maintaining his disinterested facade. Jackson's smile widened. Stole something that belongs to him, something irreplaceable. The ride back to the ranch was tense, Ethan pushing his horse harder than usual. As the cabin came into view, he saw Nina chopping wood, unaware of the danger closing in. The sight triggered memories of Sarah, of the letter he'd received too late, of promises unkept. That evening, Ethan pulled out the wooden chest from beneath his bed. Inside lay his war relics, a Union officer's coat, ammunition, maps, and a matched pair of Cold Army revolvers he hadn't touched in years. Nina watched from the doorway as he cleaned and loaded them. They're coming for me, she stated, rather than asked. 6 men at least, Ethan confirmed, led by a hunter named Jackson. I should go, she said softly. This isn't your fight. Ethan looked up, eyes hard from memories of battles long past. If a man can't decide his own fights, he's no man at all. He handed her one of the revolvers. Time to learn something new. For 3 days, he trained her. Nina learned to shoot with a natural talent that surprised even Ethan. Her keen eyes and steady hands made her a quick study. Between lessons, Ethan told her of his time as a scout, tracking Confederate movements, surviving behind enemy lines for weeks. Nina spoke of her people's hunting techniques, of reading the land and sky. On the 4th day, as they practiced drawing and firing, Nina finally revealed her truth. The man hunting me, Harrington, he trades with many tribes, brings whiskey, takes furs. 3 moons ago, he came to our camp. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes grew distant. He took what wasn't offered. When I fought, he beat me. When I screamed, no one came. Ethan's hand tightened on his revolver. After I lost his child, the elders said my blood was cursed, but it was worse. Her eyes met his. I saw him kill a young brave who witnessed what happened. Shot him in the back as he fled. Harrington paid the chief to cast me out, to call me cursed so no one would believe me. So you're running from a murderer, Ethan concluded. A murderer who owns the law in 3 counties, she corrected. No one stands against Maxwell Harrington and lives. The thunder of approaching horses interrupted their conversation. Ethan peered through the window, counting 4 riders approaching fast. Too soon, too few to be Jackson's full crew. Get in the root cellar, he ordered. But before Nina could move, the lead rider called out, Ethan Wolf, it's Joe Miller. Don't shoot an old friend. A tight smile crossed Ethan's face. 2 fingers Miller, he muttered. Damn fool cavalry, man. The man who dismounted before the cabin wore a Confederate cavalry hat atop Union blue pants, a mismatched outfit that somehow suited his weathered face. Missing 2 fingers on his left hand, Joe Miller grinned broadly, flanked by 3 hard-looking men. Heard you might need some help, Joe announced, embracing Ethan roughly. These boys are Curtis, Washburn, and Santiago. All fought with us at Missionary Ridge. How'd you know? Ethan asked, eyeing the other men cautiously. A man like Jackson starts asking questions about Ethan Wolf. Word travels. Joe's expression grew serious. Harrington's got half the territory in his pocket. Killed my cousin last year. Called it self-defense when Ben questioned his mining rights. Ethan nodded toward the cabin. It's not just Harrington. There's a woman. The Apache girl. Joe nodded. Heard that too. Don't much care why Harrington wants her. Man's a snake. That's enough for me. That night, as they fortified the property, Joe shared what he knew. Harrington's coming himself. Jackson's just the advance party. Word is, he's bringing 15 guns. Hired killers from down Mexico way. Joe passed Ethan a bottle of whiskey. They'll be here by tomorrow noon. As dawn broke, Jackson and his 5 men appeared on the ridge overlooking the property. They maintained their distance, just watching, evaluating. The confrontation came sooner than expected. As Ethan and Joe positioned ammunition around the perimeter, hoofbeats announced a lone rider approaching under a white flag. It was Jackson. Last chance, Wolf, the bounty hunter called from 50 yards out. Send out the Apache woman. Mr. Harrington is willing to forgive your interference this time. Nothing to forgive, Ethan replied calmly. No one here matching that description? Jackson sneered. We've tracked her here. We know she's with you. His hand moved casually toward his holster. Don't die for some Indian whore. Ethan's draw was lightning fast, a skill from his war days that his body remembered. His shot kicked up dirt at Jackson's horse's hooves. Next one's 2 feet higher, Ethan warned. Ride out while you can. Jackson's face darkened with rage, but he retreated, shouting over his shoulder. You're dead by sundown, Wolf. You and everyone with you. The attack came at dusk. Jackson's men spread out, approaching from multiple angles, using the lengthening shadows for cover. The first shot shattered a cabin window. Then all hell broke loose. Ethan and Joe returned fire from barricaded positions. Nina, stationed in the loft with a rifle, proved her worth as a marksman, wounding 1 attacker with her 3rd shot. The battle intensified as darkness fell. Muzzle flashes lit up the night like lightning, the crack of gunfire rolling like thunder. 2 of Jackson's men fell. One of Joe's men, Curtis, took a bullet to the shoulder. The attackers withdrew temporarily, regrouping behind the ridge. They're testing our defenses, Joe muttered, reloading. The real fight comes tomorrow, when Harrington brings his full force. As they tended to Curtis's wound, a shot rang out from the darkness. Joe collapsed, blood blooming across his chest. Nina rushed to him, pressing cloths against the wound, while Ethan and the others provided covering fire. "Sniper," Washburn growled. "Ridge to the east." Ethan moved through the darkness, using skills-honed hunting Confederates. He found the shooter, a young Mexican hired gun, and eliminated the threat silently with his knife. By the time he returned, Joe was conscious but pale. "Always knew I'd catch a bullet for you someday," Joe whispered hoarsely. "Just figured it'd be from a Reb, not some rich man's lackey." Nina's herbs and knowledge slowed the bleeding, but Joe was in no condition to fight. As dawn approached, he gripped Ethan's arm with surprising strength. "Harrington's bringing everyone he's got," Joe warned. "He can't afford to let the girl live, not with what she knows." The rising sun painted the Arizona sky blood red, silhouetting the approaching riders cresting the eastern ridge. Ethan counted 15 men, rough-looking gunslingers flanking a well-dressed figure on a black stallion. Maxwell Harrington had arrived just as promised. Inside the cabin, Nina knelt beside Joe's makeshift bed, changing his bandages. The old cavalryman's breathing was labored, his face ashen. "I should surrender," she said quietly. "Too much blood already." "Too late for that," Ethan replied, checking his revolvers. "Harrington can't leave witnesses now." Santiago approached from his lookout position. "There's someone else coming. Single rider from town. Looks like the sheriff." Ethan cursed under his breath. Sheriff Dawson was Harrington's man through and through. Everyone knew it. The law had just sided with the devil. Outside, Harrington's party halted 100 yards from the cabin. The businessman rode forward with Jackson and the sheriff, stopping at speaking distance. "Mr. Wolf," Harrington called, his voice cultured and calm, at odds with the violence in his eyes. "This has gone far enough. You're harboring a fugitive and a thief." "That so, Sheriff?" Ethan asked, ignoring Harrington completely. Sheriff Dawson shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Got a warrant for the Apache woman? Theft of property and assault. Need to take her in." "Convenient charges," Ethan noted coldly. "Did Mr. Harrington dictate them to you himself, or just pay you afterward?" Harrington's polished facade cracked slightly. "I've been more than patient, Mr. Wolf. Send out the woman, and you might still walk away from this." "Like the brave you shot in the back walked away?" Ethan challenged. A flash of surprise crossed Harrington's face, quickly masked. "I see she's filled your head with savage lies. Unfortunate." He turned to his men. "Burn them out. Kill the men. Bring me the woman. Alive." As Harrington and the sheriff retreated to safety, Jackson organized the attack. Ethan ducked back inside the cabin to finalize their desperate plan. "Nina, you know what to do," he said, handing her his best rifle. "Santiago, get Joe to the root cellar. Washburn, you're with me." Nina's eyes met his, something unspoken passing between them. She'd come to his door a desperate thief. Now she stood as his ally, perhaps more. She nodded once, then climbed to her sniper's position in the barn loft. The battle erupted with an intensity that painted the morning sky with gun smoke. Harrington's men advanced from multiple positions, using the corral and outbuildings as cover. Ethan and Washburn held the cabin, firing through loopholes cut in the walls. Nina's rifle cracked rhythmically from the barn, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. 3 attackers fell in the first assault. The others retreated, regrouped, then pressed forward again, this time with burning torches. The first flew through a cabin window, setting the curtains ablaze. Washburn smothered the flames while Ethan continued firing. A second torch hit the barn roof. Dry wood and hay caught quickly. Nina abandoned her position, dashing for safer ground amid a hail of bullets. Ethan's heart froze as she stumbled, then disappeared from view behind the corral. "Cover me!" he shouted to Washburn, then burst from the cabin, revolvers blazing. The air filled with lead as Ethan charged across the yard. 2 attackers fell before his onslaught. A bullet grazed his shoulder, another tore through his hat. He didn't slow. Behind the corral, he found Nina, alive but pinned down by Jackson and two gunmen. She'd taken cover behind a water trough, her ammunition nearly spent. Their eyes met across 20 feet of exposed ground. Without words, they coordinated, a skill born from days of working side by side. Nina fired her last three shots rapidly, forcing the attackers to cover. Ethan used the distraction to close the distance. His first shot caught one gunman in the chest. The second missed as Jackson dove for cover. A shot rang out from behind, catching Ethan in the leg. He fell hard, turning to see one of Harrington's men advancing. Before the man could fire again, a knife flashed through the air, Nina's blade finding its mark in the gunman's throat. Jackson emerged from cover, pistol trained on Ethan's heart. "Should have minded your own business, Wolf," he growled. The shot that came wasn't from Jackson's gun. It was from behind him. Joe Miller, pale as death but standing, his revolver smoking. Jackson collapsed, surprise frozen on his face. Joe stumbled forward, then fell to his knees, the effort having drained his remaining strength. "Told you I had one good fight left," he gasped before collapsing. The gunfire had died down across the property. Harrington's remaining men, seeing Jackson fall, began to retreat, all except Harrington himself, who charged toward the corral on horseback, rage replacing caution. "You Apache witch!" he screamed, bearing down on Nina with pistol raised. Ethan, despite his wounded leg, threw himself forward, tackling Nina out of the bullet's path. They tumbled together as Harrington's horse thundered past. The businessman wheeled around for another pass, but now faced both Ethan and Nina, who'd recovered her rifle. "It's over, Harrington," Ethan called. "Your men are gone." "Nothing's over," Harrington snarled, his cultured veneer completely shattered. "She's mine. Always was. No filthy Apache tells tales about Maxwell Harrington and lives." He raised his pistol, but Nina was faster. Her bullet caught him in the chest, knocking him from his horse. Harrington lay in the dirt, blood spreading across his fine suit, eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan limped to the fallen man, Nina at his side. "The girl you attacked," Ethan said coldly, "just outshot you fair and square. Remember that when you meet your maker." Harrington's last words came as a bloody whisper. "She was nothing. Just an Indian." Then his eyes fixed on eternity. Sheriff Dawson, who'd kept his distance during the fight, approached cautiously. Seeing Harrington dead, a visible relief crossed his features. "Man had me by the throat," he admitted. "Owned half the county's debts. Threatened my family." He looked at the carnage around them. "I reckon this was self-defense. Clear as day. Won't be no charges." In the aftermath, they buried Joe with full military honors, Union and Confederate together. Santiago and Washburn departed after helping rebuild what the fire had damaged. Sheriff Dawson spread word that Harrington had died in an ambush by Mexican bandits, a tale that satisfied those who'd feared the businessman too much to question it. Ethan's leg healed slowly. During his recovery, Nina rarely left his side. They spoke little, but understood much. The land and its harsh lessons had forged something between them, stronger than gratitude, deeper than obligation. When autumn painted the cottonwoods gold, Ethan found Nina by the creek, washing clothes. The bruises that had marked her when she first arrived had long faded. "Land gets lonely," he said, watching her work. "Man needs someone who understands the silence." She looked up, measuring his words and the man behind them. "I came here to steal," she replied, "not to stay." "And I let you live on a whim," he countered. "Life changes directions when we least expect it." Nina stood, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm carrying your child," she said simply, hands resting on her still flat stomach. "Not from that first night's offer, but from choice, from what came after." Ethan stepped forward. taking her work-roughened hand in his. From his pocket, he produced a simple gold band, his mother's ring. Not asking because of the child, he clarified. Asking because you've earned your place here. Same as I have. Her answer came as a single nod, but her eyes held everything words couldn't capture. They stood together by the flowing water, two survivors who had found in each other what the world had tried to take from both. The following spring, as wildflowers bloomed across the range, Nina gave birth to a son. They named him James after Ethan's father. The boy had his mother's keen eyes and his father's quiet strength. On a crisp autumn day, Ethan sat on the porch, teaching young James to whittle while Nina cleaned her rifle nearby. A rider approached from the main trail, a messenger from Cedar Creek. Brings news of trouble, Ethan remarked, recognizing the urgency in the rider's pace. Nina set her rifle aside, a ghost of a smile crossing her lips. Always is trouble somewhere. Think we've earned the right to choose our battle, Ethan replied. Yes, she agreed, watching the approaching rider. That much mercy we've earned. In the Western Territories, mercy wasn't something freely given. It was something claimed through blood and sacrifice. Something worth fighting for. Something Ethan, Wolf, and Nina had both finally found, in the most unlikely place of all.